In his 1967 book Of Grammatology, the Algerian philosopher Jacques Derrida argues that writing is not secondary to speech. Any linguistic system requires iterability, the possibility of repeating the same signifier in different circumstances, and iterability underlies both writing and speech in such a way as to make it impossible to determine which of the two is prior. In fact, however, speech versus writing is just one example of a binary opposition. The other major ones for Derrida are presence versus absence, literal versus metaphorical, and essential versus marginal. To some extent, the supposed opposition between speech and writing is the origin of these other oppositions. Once that's called into question, the others suffer the same fate. That doesn't mean that they disappear, or even that they can disappear. They can't, because they underpin the possibility of saying anything at all. The point, rather, is to recognise that they can have no absolute authority, because on what could such authority be grounded? Well, it would have to be another binary opposition, self-validating truth versus falsity. What it does mean is that we can play with those oppositions. You don't have to be a philosopher to do that, because the difference between philosophy and literary criticism is just one more binary opposition. But it's probably fair to say that if you are a literary critic, your biggest focus will be two binary oppositions in particular: essential versus marginal and presence versus absence. And if you accept all that, you're what's called a deconstructionist. You look at texts and try to work out what's marginal in them, Bertha Rochester, for example, in Jane Eyre, or possibly what's absent altogether, the source of Mr. Darcy's wealth in Pride and Prejudice, for example, and you'll use that to interrogate the text. In practice, most of this is an ethical rather than a metaphysical enterprise. In the English-speaking world, at least, when critics put on their deconstructionist hats, they tend to do so wielding cudgels on behalf of some marginalised community. Apart from the fact that a lot of deconstructionists are deliberately opaque writers, I think that's one of the things that gives deconstructionism a bad name. It's moral motivation. Not that that's a bad thing, of course. The problem comes because as a deconstructionist, you can't really defend the opposition between good and bad, justice and injustice. Those are just more binary oppositions. So it looks as if you've simply been playing at being moral. The other problem is, how can we say there are binary oppositions at all unless there's something more basic underpinning the dualism? How do we know speech as opposed to writing, for example, rather than, well, insert name of anything here, a tin of cat food?